So getting into a graduate program in chemistry is not as bad as you might think. And this is one of the payouts in getting a chemistry degree, is that it's one of the few degrees where you can just graduate and go out and get a job and be done with it. So a lot of people end up doing that, and only a small number of people actually consider going on and getting a graduate degree in chemistry, like a Ph.D. So the competition's a lot smaller. So to even be considered into a Ph.D. program, your GPA needs to be higher than 3.0. And that's the bare minimum. So of course, the higher your GPA is, the better off you're going to be. But if your GPA is lower than 3.0, you'll have to take a different path because they can't accept you. Also, nowadays, you need to have undergraduate research for you to go into a graduate program. So at least a year, maybe 2. You don't need to have a publication or anything like that, but you need to have this experience already. And after that, really all you have to do is apply to the program. So the programs accept admissions in around December for the following year. So you need to plan early on this. You need to go to look at the actual programs that you're interested in and look at their timeline and what they're actually looking for. And remember, there's a person there called a graduate coordinator. So they have a person who's employed just to help graduate students make the transition and join the program. So if you have any questions or any problems, go and find the graduate coordinator and call them, and they'll be more than happy to help you. But other than that, you write a cover letter which says why you're interested in that school, why you're interested in going to graduate school. You send them a copy of your transcripts. You got to get letters of recommendation. So typically it's 3. You need to ask letter writers well ahead of time, at least a month ahead of time. And you want to make sure that there's somebody who can give you a very positive letter of recommendation. And the last thing are the GREs. They are standardized exams for getting into graduate school. Different schools have different expectations on them, but this is another one you need to plan early on these. So there's 2 different types of GREs. There's the general one, which is kind of like an SAT. Those are very easy to take. There's many testing centers. You can go inside, take the general exam whenever you want, and they digitally grade it, and you get your answer right then and there. But if the program wants the subject-specific GRE, that's a different story. So they only offer those maybe 3 times per year, and they'll offer it in specific dates. So you need to go onto the GRE website and figure out when they're giving out the chemistry-specific GRE and be able to plan it. And so sometimes you need to take this exam way ahead of your applying, but many schools still expect you to have this. So I get that I ask this quite a bit, and I tell students maybe you should go to graduate school, and they say, I don't want to continue on, I'm kind of burned out from, getting a bachelor's degree. And this is a misconception. So getting your PhD is a completely different idea than getting your bachelor's degree. To me, getting a PhD was way less stressful. So when you get your bachelor's degree, there is something always on your plate. So during the semester, when the semester's on, you are just busy. As soon as you take an exam, there's a paper you got to write. As soon as you turn the paper, there's another exam you got to write. And so it actually gets quite stressful during that time. And getting a PhD is not like that. So your first year is a little busy, but the rest of the time, really you're just working on a research project and being a TA. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But if you ever worked inside of a lab, that's really what you do in graduate school, is work in a lab, read papers, go to group meetings and things like that, and then you work a little bit on the side. So it's not like that. There will be stressful moments, but really there's not this overwhelming, grind that you have, and it doesn't really stress you out. So mainly it's about the time, it's about getting up every day and going in and doing work. But this idea of always having something over your head, that's not really true. So it's not like getting a bachelor's degree. So something that I make it a point to tell everyone I talk to, and this is something that many people do not know, you get paid to go to graduate school in chemistry. So this is, again, another thing that you get paid out for getting a degree in chemistry. Chemistry is a little bit harder than other degrees, but this is the payout, is they will pay you to go to graduate school. So this idea that you need to come up with 70 or 80 grand of tuition to go for 5 years. That's not how it works. So they actually pay you to give you a stipend, and you do TA work. And, they don't pay you a lot, but it's enough. So it's enough that you don't have to accrue bills if you don't want to. You're going to be renting out a room and things like that. It's not a lot of money, but you don't have to worry about, coming up with the tuition every time. So I actually didn't need help from my parents when I got both my master's and my Ph.D. I was able to fund it myself. And if you want to live a little bit larger, you can easily get student loans, and so that's a whole nother discussion whether do you want to go into debt or not. With me, I accrued a little bit of debt because I wanted to live, to be a little bit more comfortable during my time, and I don't regret it. And but the idea is you get paid to go to graduate school. So really, what's it actually like when you get in there? So your first year, they have you take part-time courses. So like a half load. It's like 2 classes. For me, it was a quarter system. It was 2 classes per quarter. So it's not like getting a bachelor's degree. You really don't go to school full time. The courses are more in-depth versions of the courses you took as an undergrad. They're a little bit harder, but you're not going to school full time. So you have 2 courses that you got to deal with, and that's only for the first year. After the first year, that's literally the last course that you're ever going to have to take. After that first year, the rest of the time is teaching and doing research. And like I said, this is what they pay you to do in graduate school, is they pay you to be a TA. So at UC Davis, for a given class, there are about given general chemistry class, there are about 500 people in there. There's 1 teacher, and then there's 15 lab sections. So the teacher cannot teach all the lab sections, so they hire graduate students to do that. And if you ever look, the people who are babysitting labs, they don't look like they're working very hard. You don't. They need somebody to be in there to keep an eye on them and answer questions. And really, you just spend time in the lab, you do a little grading, and that's it. And they give you a stipend, and this allows you to pay for your graduate school. And then the rest of the time, they expect you to do research. So they really don't want you to have a job outside of the degree. And typically for a PhD, it takes about 4 to 5 years. And that's really the hard part about getting a PhD, is it takes about 5 years to do it. You got to keep yourself motivated the whole time, keep getting up and keep going in. The really fun part is in the very beginning when you go in, they typically will have a class where all the professors in that particular school will come by and talk a little bit about their research. And the idea is, more or less, you get to pick the professor you work with, and of the research they do, you get to at least have some say or pick the project that you work on. So don't get me wrong, there can be certain times, this is not always true. Sometimes a professor's lab is completely full and they can't take on other people. Sometimes the professor really, really wants somebody to work on a particular project. But the idea is you have a say in what you're doing. So when you talk about doing research for 4 to 5 years, it's in a project that you really find fascinating. So it is really not that bad. So one of the things I personally think is funny is going through, and especially getting my bachelor's degrees, nobody really talked about what's it like to have a PhD. What's so different about it? And with me, I like to just say a few things about this. They say when you graduate from a college, it's called an alma mater, which means a birthing mother. When I got a bachelor's degree, I didn't feel any different. When I was done, I was more educated. Really, the world didn't change that much for me. I could go and get a good paying job somewhere, but really my opportunities weren't that much different. People didn't treat me that much different. The world didn't treat me that much different. The exact opposite happened. When I got a PhD, I really felt like I was reborn. Just the world was completely different to me, how the world treated me in terms of my prospects and things like that. It's really a changing experience. And really the first one is, you get to be called doctor, which took me about 10 years to get used to. But the idea is the people that you know in your life, like your friends and your family, they really don't know what to think about it. So with a bachelor's degree, people have a good idea. You take some classes. It's kind of like going to high school a little bit longer. The PhD, most people have no idea what you just did, and they know it's something very, very important and very big, but they really don't know how to treat you. They don't know what the difference is, and it's kind of funny. So you get to get called doctor. You can make people call you doctor if you want. Just to give you an idea, what's it like is, people think you're always right. They think that just because you have a PhD, you kind of know everything. But this is just how people view that. They think if you have a PhD, you must know almost everything about everything, which is not, unfortunately not right. But just how people treat you is like that. They don't know what to expect from you. Also, in terms of your job opportunities, it's really incredible. When you get a PhD, the world opens up. So with a PhD, you are qualified to get a job in any four-year university in the world, and you are qualified to get a job anywhere in the world. And so it's really common for people to leave the United States after they get a PhD. So I knew a guy who, as soon as he got his PhD, he was like, I'm done with America, and he moved to England. So a company hired him, paid him to come to England, and he's been in England ever since. People do that all the time. Also, after you graduate, you can do what's called a postdoctoral position, which is a couple, 3 extra years of just doing research. But people go to Europe and do that all the time. So you can go live in Germany for 3 years or Switzerland in 3 years, and it's no problem. They want that kind of worldliness. They want people in Europe want to get people from America to come over there and share their research experiences. So you can totally do that. And it sounds, might sound cliche, but I actually went to school with an astronaut. So one of the people that graduated with me literally joined NASA and went up on the space shuttle twice. And this is the idea when people tell you that, you can be an astronaut when you're a kid. Yeah, you can if you have a PhD. And the idea is they're not sending bachelor degree people up on the space shuttle. You have to have a PhD to do that, but you can do that. The other thing is when you apply for jobs, it's kind of different. Normally when you apply for a job, they're kind of on the winning end of things and you're trying to pitch yourself to them. And that still is kind of true, but there's a little bit of a coming back at you now because you're such a rare commodity. The company kind of courts you. I mean, they're definitely looking at you and seeing if you're, going to be a good fit for their position, but they really have to put their best foot forward because they want you to come there. You are a rarity, you're worth something, and so they will actually try to court you in that way. And a couple of the things when you go to a job interview at a PhD level, you spend all day, they take you to lunch, and they take you to dinner. One of the things when I really felt like I've gotten somewhere, when I got this job here at Sonoma State, I got a moving stipend for it, which means that they gave me the job. Once I got it, they gave me a certain amount of money to move here. So when this is, for me, I didn't have to pack stuff and put it into a van and drive it to where I was going. We paid somebody else to do that. And to me, that's what really I felt like I had gotten somewhere, that I didn't have to be directly involved in my moving. And I guess just final, I don't know if your parents were like mine. My dad was always on me about, you got to work hard and you got to, strive to make it. And, they never let up on you in terms of, you got to do better in the world. And I'll just say that once you get a PhD, they finally start letting up on you, that they really, I think they come to terms with the fact that you've kind of made it. And so, they can't be prouder. So something to think about. And like I talked about in some of the previous videos is, this is really nice, but it's not for everybody. You really got to think, do I want to be an advancement? Do I like academics? Do I like spending time in the lab? Do I like thinking about things? And if the answer is yes, then maybe a PhD is for you. But some people are happy saying, I'm done, I got my bachelor's degree, I'm going to go work in industry, and that's fine too. But it's a question you really need to answer for yourself.